everybody, Stephen Key here, and I have a special guest that's going to show you what it takes to be a professional product developer. Because Paul Maguire, that's what you do for a living, is that correct?
That's what I do for a living.
Is it an easy job? Let's start with that. Is it an easy job?
It's not an easy job, but it's a fun job.
Okay. Did you go to school for it? I mean,
I went to school for. I ended up going to school for an oddball kind of major called plastics engineering, at a place called the University of Lowell in Massachusetts. Okay. And there you learn all kinds of pretty much everything you need to know about making products and plastics. Okay. And it's one of the few programs in the country that does that. And through there, and then got into working in manufacturing, then got into working in product development, then did product development for other people for 15 or so years, and it's just it's been a wild ride since then.
Okay, great. So you've worked with some major companies. I know your background. You're with kind of I wouldn't say a startup now, but is it a startup now that you're with?
Yeah, it's a startup. We got this going about 3 or 4 years ago when Kat Norrie came to me. She's the owner of Stasher. Came to me with an idea for a product that she wanted to do, and we worked on it together to try to get that developed. And since that time, that product has done extremely well. And she's formed a company around it. We've been on Shark Tank, and that product has done really, really well. And I still work for that company.
Okay, wonderful. Now, I want to thank you for sending some notes over for me. Okay.
Sure.
It's going to help me, and I'm going to read some of the points that you made, and maybe you could go take it a little bit further. But you had mentioned the first thing you mentioned, and explain this to me. You said looking for space or needs in existing markets to develop new ideas.
Yeah, so actually, when you and I reconnected, I reread your book a little bit, and it occurred to me that purposely or unpurposely, there's a number of things in there that I've been doing throughout my career, and one of them for new products, and one of them is looking at what products are currently available and looking for the space in between. It's kind of like skiing. You don't look at the trees, you look where the trees aren't. And a lot of times for new product development, that's one of the things that you want to do. You want to look for the gaps, the opportunities that are there to perhaps take a product and improve upon it. And I think from a licensing standpoint, that's the solid path. I've never licensed idea. I've always worked from basically for the people I develop products for. But from a licensing standpoint, working within kind of like as you discussed in your book, working within kind of the framework that they work within makes the idea much more absorbable, much more presentable, much more, this takes something that we do now and adds to it without getting into all new manufacturing techniques, all new tooling, getting into things we don't do well. So that's an easier path to market for many things.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, because I believe if you can find maybe an existing product you're currently selling and you can make an improvement, a small improvement, you know there's a market demand, and hopefully the manufacturing won't be so different. I mean, it's pretty close to what you're currently doing, and it's like the new improved. But how do you do that, Paul? I mean, do you look at reviews on Amazon, what people are asking for? Do you just question it? Do you ask people? Do you do a focus group?
I think it kind of depends upon the area you're working in or the market that you're working in. For me, a lot of it has come from product managers or from other people who have studied the market and go, we need a product that kind of does this. And I think I sent you something, but this was one I worked on a while back. This was a product that my company manufactured a variety of outdoor products and what have you. And we had a number of products that we called kinetics, or products that when the wind would hit them, would spin and look attractive and things like that. And basically, the product you see here is the product that we started with. Okay. And then we wanted, sometimes when the wind isn't blowing, or when we wanted the product to do more, we wanted it to do something more than just kind of this. And I think I sent you some video of where we went with that. Also, one of the big issues, one of the big things I've also found over my career is sometimes design constraints limitations to what you can do are actually opportunities. Again, they're the trees to work between sometimes. So one of the design constraints that the product manager, the category manager who worked this brand, gave to me was that, the wind function, it works beautifully in the wind and it turns so easily, and it needs to maintain that. I can't add anything to it or do anything to it that would interfere with that. So one of the ideas we had was to have a water feature to the product. But I knew if I added a water feature to the product, it could not interfere with what the current product does. So I couldn't piggyback on that. I had to leave that alone. Okay. And then again, I don't know if you want to show some video later on, but so we ended up adding this outside cage. Which I had conceived, and the product on this outside cage, two of these six cage elements are actually water pipes, and we brought water in through the shaft. These are water pipes. The water comes out in a kind of like a sprinkler format, and it goes in two directions. It goes in one direction in order to spin the cage. Okay. And it goes in another direction in order to spin the element on the inside. So the element on the inside also picks up and spins in the opposite direction. So one's going one way, one's going the other way, and it made a very nice visual impact on the product. Totally kind of changed the marketplace. We got, I don't know, I think we have two or three patents on that idea that was able to create a protectable space for the company for the company I was working with at the time, and has been a good product. Did fantastic on QVC. Okay. And there's a number of different versions of the product that exist now.
Yeah, I'll show the video because it's really quite amazing to see it work. So thank you. It's interesting. There's an existing product, you made an improvement, and there's a couple things you have to keep with that existing product, like you said, but you're adding some other features. How important is cost when you're doing this?
Certainly, it's a major factor, right? If you want the product to be successful, it's got to come in in the right place. Sometimes it's a factor in the good direction. So in this particular case, the additional feature allowed us to have a larger cost because it allowed us to charge more for the product. Okay. So I didn't need to bring this product in cost-wise at the same cost as the previous product. People recognized the functionality of it was very apparent. So it gave us more room for manufacturing, which gave us more because of the fact that we could sell for a higher price point. But doing it in a method that utilized methodologies that we were already using. We didn't change factories. We didn't bring in a lot of high-end technology. We didn't really extend the manufacturing process too far. Okay. In order to do that. So that helped keep the cost down.
Because, so you took existing technology that already existed and brought it over here to create something new. Very smart. Yeah. When you're building something and you're getting it a quote with your factory, I mean, how important is to write that spec? Like, we want this, this, and this. I mean, that's kind of your background, right? So
yeah, it's extremely important. It's one thing that a lot of inventors miss. Your product is not what you think it is. Your product is only what you have written down on paper. If you need to specify what your product is, what it's made out of, what its performance requirements are, and the manufacturers are actually happier to see that. They're happy to see a detailed product specification that helps them understand exactly what you want, because that begins to build the trust and that you know what you're doing as an inventor or as a new product person, but also it helps them understand that you know what you're getting as well. I think a lot of inventors, they get into the first batch or second batch of product and it doesn't behave well, it doesn't do what they wanted it to do. And then if they talk to the manufacturer said, well, you never told me that. You never said that was an important part. I mean, of the function or of the feature or of the product. And that's one of the reasons we didn't check for that. Okay. Because you never mentioned that that's an important thing. So your product specification is key, absolutely key to it. It's and you're not inventing what you see. It's what's on that paper when you make the contract or in your file. That have you.
So, Paul, that's a really good point. I think a lot of inventors don't take it that far. So, and maybe they don't have that background. Is there any suggestion that if I'm an inventor, I build a prototype, it looks pretty good, but I don't know the right components to spec, and I'm not quite sure what the manufacturing techniques can do. How do I gain that information? Can I hire someone on the outside to help me do that?
You can. Oftentimes, you can find an independent a person who will work with who will work with you to develop something like that. Also, you can work with your manufacturer. If you start with, this is what I want it to do,
Okay.
then work with the manufacturer and say, what product constraints, what dimensions do I need to hold, what material do I need to use, what what etc. In order to attain all these things, eventually your spec becomes those dimensions and that material in addition to the overall product design. But a good manufacturer will be able to work you along that path a little bit. And again, the manufacturers, they prefer that, they like that, because they know they're not going to, have an issue with you paying the bill for the goods when you get the goods and they don't do what you told them, what you wanted it to do, but you never told them that you wanted it to do that. That this dimension is really important, and because it doesn't, because it's not, perfectly uncentered, now it wobbles, and because it wobbles, it doesn't make any, it's not useful to me. There's ways to address that, but the earlier you think them out and put them in your product specification, the better.
So this actually takes you from an amateur to a pro. Wouldn't you think that's pretty much accurate once you start to understand?
It's one step along the way for sure, yeah.
Okay, that's one step. Do you ever work with outside inventors at these companies? Do they ever come in and submit ideas to you? Some companies
are open to outside ideas. Some companies are not. More so, I think, these days than in the past. They recognize the value of the fact that they can't necessarily do everything themselves. And most companies have will have a person in whose job it is to like filter through incoming ideas. Okay. Oftentimes, I was the person who would receive those ideas from the initial person. They'd give them to me and go, "What do you think about this? Can we do this? What's the opportunity here? Could we, this is like an idea, but could we actually manufacture it?" And that's kind of like when we get into the decision of actually licensing something or not licensing something.
Okay. So is there any tips that you could help that person that's submitting an idea to someone like you in a company? Because like you said, sometimes you'll probably see a prototype that's pretty rough. Maybe there's no spec to it. Is there anything else? Is there attitude? Is there being a team player? Is there anything else that you see that maybe inventors are making a mistake?
Certainly, the more that you can present yourself and present your product idea as something that's been well considered, that you've thought through, that you've been to, you understand what the company that you're presenting to makes. You understand what their competitors make. Okay. If you can identify your product as filling a gap in the market or doing something different that their product doesn't do, and maybe pointing out some of these things to them if they don't get it right away, including things like, a product like this utilizes your same manufacturing techniques. There's nothing special. There's no big leap of invention that needs to big leap of manufacturing technology that needs to be included here.
Okay. What about the relationship? I mean, when you look at a product that comes in, are you evaluating the product but also the inventor? Because sometimes they might be a little unreasonable, they might be a little nutty, or they might ask for too much.
Most inventors are a little unreasonable and a little nutty. The one of the failures I've seen regularly on with inventors, and this is one of the wonderful things about Kat Nori at Stasher, is doing all the downside stuff. Most inventors they're product people, but they don't think about the marketing, the sales, and they get a little too close to their product. They like, no, this is exactly the way I want to do it. This is and they don't take like some outside feedback. They don't take some good input that they might be getting, because they're a little too protective of the concept of the idea, because it's their baby, and because of that they can't let it grow. And basically, if you're starting out with a seedling, it's going to become a tree, and it's going to change a bit on along the way. And you can't, unless you're going to do bonsais, you got to recognize the fact that change is going to take place and have some flexibility to that.
Well, Paul, thank you very much for your insights. Everybody's listening. I want to pull back the curtain a little bit. I want to help those inventors become professional, and I think you helped today a great deal. So
no, thanks for contacting me. Thanks for having me on. It's been it's a pleasure. You're the guru in this space, and it's been an honor to talk to you.
All right, thank you very much, Paul.
Thanks.